A man is lying on the ground, blood everywhere, and the thing that killed him isn't a knife, it isn't a gun. It's a rock, sharpened by hand, tied to a stick, swung with enough force to crack a skull. This happened over 3 million years ago. Before language, before fire, before we were even fully human. And somewhere in that moment, something changed forever. We stopped being just another animal in the food chain. We became the animal that could kill from a distance, kill on purpose, and kill better than anything else on Earth. So what was that weapon? Who made it? And why does it still shape how we fight, hunt, and even think today? Every weapon you've ever seen, a knife, a rifle, a nuclear missile, traces back to one single idea, one moment, one tool. And it happened long before humans could even speak. In the next few minutes, you're going to find out what the very first weapon actually was, why scientists think it was invented, and how one small decision by a group of early humans changed the entire direction of our species. Some of what you're about to hear will sound less like ancient history and more like the plot of a thriller. Stick around, because the ending connects directly to something you probably own right now. Let's start with the obvious question. What actually counts as a weapon? A rock lying on the ground isn't a weapon. A rock picked up and thrown at a threat, that's a weapon. The difference is intention. Somewhere between 3.3 million and 2.6 million years ago, early hominins in East Africa started doing something no other animal on the planet was doing. They were deliberately shaping stone into sharp edges. Archaeologists call these Oldowan tools, named after Olduvai Gorge, in Tanzania, where the first examples were found. Now here's the twist most people don't expect. These tools weren't first made for killing. They were made for scavenging. Early humans were using sharpened stone flakes to cut meat off carcasses that lions and hyenas had already killed and left behind. So the very first tool wasn't a weapon at all. It was a can opener for nature's leftovers, and it wasn't easy to make. Knapping stone into a usable edge takes practice. You have to strike one rock against another at exactly the right angle, or you just get dust and shattered pieces. Researchers who've tried to replicate Oldowan tools by hand often fail dozens of times before producing a single usable flake. Which means this wasn't some lucky accident. Somebody figured this out, got good at it, and then taught it to others. That's the first piece of technology transfer in human history. Before fire. Before language as we know it. Before anything we'd recognize as culture. Visual. Stick figure hominin, striking stone flakes, on-screen text 3.3 million years ago. Cut to scavenging a lion kill. But that changes fast. Because once you're carrying a sharp object regularly, you're one bad encounter away from using it defensively. And that's exactly what researchers believe happened next. A 2012 discovery in South Africa pushed the timeline even further back. Bone tools, estimated to be around 1 million years old, showed wear patterns consistent with digging, and, more controversially, with combat use. But the real turning point, the moment a tool becomes unmistakably a weapon, comes with something much more specific: a wooden spear. In 1995, archaeologists in Schöningen, Germany, pulled 8 wooden spears out of a coal mine. These weren't sharpened sticks. They were engineered, carved from spruce and pine, balanced like a modern javelin, with the widest point positioned toward the front third of the shaft for better throwing accuracy. And they were roughly 300,000 years old. Think about that. Before Homo sapiens even existed as a species, someone was already designing throwing weapons with aerodynamics in mind. That's not an accident. That's engineering. So who made them? Most researchers point to Homo heidelbergensis, a species that lived across Africa and Europe and is considered a likely common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. And the spears weren't found alone. They were found alongside the butchered remains of more than 20 wild horses. This wasn't defense. This was an organized hunt. A group of early humans working together, using engineered weapons to take down animals many times their size and speed. That single detail tells you something huge. Weapons didn't just help humans survive, They forced humans to cooperate. You can't take down a horse alone with a wooden spear. You need a team, a plan, and probably some way to communicate that plan. Some researchers argue this pressure, the need to coordinate a hunt, may have helped push early language forward long before anyone was speaking in full sentences. There's actually a physical price for all of this, too. Throwing a spear hard, over and over, for generations doesn't just change behavior. It changes bodies. Researchers studying human shoulder anatomy have pointed out that our species has a uniquely low, flexible shoulder joint compared to chimpanzees, one that stores elastic energy like a slingshot when we throw. Some scientists argue this adaptation didn't come from carrying things or climbing trees. It came from throwing weapons again and again for hundreds of thousands of years, until evolution rewired the joint itself. In other words, the first weapon didn't just change what humans did. It may have changed what humans physically are. Now here's where it gets even stranger, because weapons didn't just change how humans hunted animals. They changed how humans treated each other. Once a species has the ability to kill from a distance, easily, repeatedly, the entire social structure around conflict has to change too. And there's disturbing evidence this shift happened early. At a site called Sima de los Huesos in Spain, researchers found a roughly 430,000-year-old skull with two nearly identical puncture wounds above the eye socket. Same size, same shape, same angle. Researchers concluded these wounds were almost certainly caused by the same weapon, struck twice, deliberately. This is widely considered the oldest suspected murder case in human history. Not an accident, not an animal attack, a weapon used with intent against another person. So let's connect this. A sharpened rock made for scavenging, a wooden spear made for hunting, and within a few 100,000 years, that same technology turned inward, used person against person. That's the real story here. The first weapon wasn't invented to kill other humans. It was invented to survive. Cutting meat. Taking down prey too fast and too strong to fight barehanded. But the moment humans figured out they could extend their reach, their force, and their reaction time beyond their own bodies, violence stopped being limited by muscle. It became limited only by imagination. And that idea never went away. Every weapon since, the bow, the sword, the gun, the missile, is really just a more advanced version of the exact same original decision. Don't rely on your body, extend it. Visual, on-screen text, oldest murder, slow reveal of skull illustration with red highlight on wound sites, matches your existing brand thumbnail style. Here's the part that should genuinely stop you for a second. That decision, made by a hominin who couldn't speak, couldn't write, and probably couldn't even plan more than a day ahead, is still the foundation of nearly every conflict humans have ever had since. The spear at Schöningen and the skull at Sima de los Huesos are separated by roughly 100,000 years and a few hundred miles, but they're really the same story. Tool becomes weapon. Weapon becomes power. Power gets used, eventually, on us. So the first weapon wasn't a sword. It wasn't even metal. It was a sharp rock, picked up by someone who was probably just hungry and outmatched by bigger predators. But that one decision, to stop relying only on the body and start extending it, is the same decision behind every weapon that's ever existed since, including the ones sitting in a drawer in your own home right now. And here's the uncomfortable part. Every upgrade since then has followed the exact same pattern. Extend the reach, extend the force, extend the distance between the person throwing and the person getting hit. The spear did it with a few feet of wood. The bow did it with tension. The gun did it with gunpowder. The missile did it with a guidance system. Same decision, made over and over, just with better materials each time. Makes you wonder what the next version of that decision looks like. If you had to guess what humans will consider a weapon 100,000 years from now, what would it be? Drop your guess in the comments. I read everyone. And if this kind of deep dive into how ancient humans actually lived is your thing, subscribe, because this channel is built entirely around questions exactly like this one.